I'm joined by Spencer McLaughlin of Locked On Pac-12 today to talk about what's next for Arizona State University after they move on from Ray Anderson as the athletic director on this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Riiche Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Thanks as always for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. Wherever you get your podcast, hit like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. And of course, you can stay in touch with that content by following me on Twitter. You can find me at RiicheBrads36 and the podcast as well at LO_Sun Devils. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Spencer McLaughlin is here. Thanks as always for joining me, Spencer. Always a good time to have you on. Let's hop right into this bad boy. Ray Anderson out as the Sun Devils athletic director. He is stepping down effective immediately as of Monday. It's a new era of Sun Devils athletics, and we're going to turn it straight over to you. What are your initial thoughts from a Pac-12 perspective?
Well, first thing is that with regards to that FanDuel $5 winning money line bet, I think Oregon at Arizona State would be a good one to slide in there. Yeah, I know. I had to.
Yeah,
actually, no, I didn't.
I
didn't have to. I just kind of wanted to. But I think this is fantastic for Arizona State. It's hard to not look at this and be excited if you're a Sun Devils fan, and frankly, be excited if you're just someone who loves and appreciates college sports and the potential of what, places can be athletically, in Pac-12 circles. I think there's long been a conversation amongst fans and media members that Arizona State is kind of sleeping giant of sorts. Now they've never been that giant, right? It's not like a Nebraska sleeping giant where like, hey, if they get things rolling the way they did once upon a time, they can, win at a national championship sort of level. It's more along the lines of, quite frankly, a Texas A&M, right? Not identical situations, but just has never been like, have had a couple flashes here and there, has never been at the highest level where the potential is. Texas A&M has always had the money to compete at the highest level. They just never have, right? They've never sniffed a college football playoff. Johnny Manziel was their peak as a football program, and gosh almighty, was he awesome. I think we can all agree with that, but since then, and they've made these massive investments and whatnot, it's been a letdown, which is why their coaching search is so interesting, because the potential has always been there. They've got a passionate fan base. They've got plenty of money. They're located in the midst of one of the top 2 recruiting states in the country. Some would argue the number 1 recruiting state in the country. And Arizona State, I think, has that same sort of element. It's just been a perennially underachieving, certainly a football program. They've had good years for sure, but have they ever competed at the level that a lot of us feel they're capable of? I think the answer is no. And I think that's definitely started at the top with Ray Anderson. It was not a good tenure, and Arizona State fans were frustrated with him and, led a fairly public campaign, from my understanding, to ouster him as the AD. And I think rightfully so, because the Herm Edwards hire, look, it wasn't technically a disaster until the year that he was let go. But when that hire was made, you went, it's okay. It's fine. And the football coach is the most important hire that you make as an AD. Everybody knows and understands that. So I think that there were a lot of missteps, and that Arizona State, with their location in Tempe, they're, I think, one of the largest public universities, at least from a campus perspective. It's a beautiful campus in the country. You've got prime recruiting territory down there in Arizona, which is one of these kind of emerging recruiting powers of a state. It's not a Texas, California, Florida for sure, but it can certainly be more than it has been. Arizona State can, because they're in Arizona. You're close to California. You're not that far from Texas. Like, all of these things add up to say, okay, the potential's there, but it has to be guided in the right direction. The necessary investments and energy have to be made, and I think that removing Ray Anderson is the right step in that direction for ASU.
Yeah, and I love that you bring up a lot of things that us as Arizona fans talk about. It's so funny.
You're an Arizona fan? That's crazy.
I'm about to start this whole podcast over. Oh man.
Oh man, I woke up and chose violence today, let me tell you.
Dude, like I was meaning like state of Arizona.
Oh, I know, but I heard
Yeah.
it and I was like, oh, he didn't say state. I got to get him for that one.
Yeah, no, I was not referring to U of A when I said that. I was referring to the state of Arizona. But
Yes, you may continue now.
Yeah. So how about we do residents instead of fans? Because the point that I'm trying to make is we hear so many of these different, like almost cliches kind of thing. And the biggest one is like talking about, ASU's like a sleeping giant. Is we hear that all the time, and it's almost like a take a drink every time somebody says that. So I love it personally though, because I do believe that. I do believe that Arizona State has that potential because of so many different things. You've got a huge campus in Tempe. You've got a Polytech campus. You've got a West campus. You've got a Yuma campus. You've got a downtown Phoenix campus. You offer so many different things with the Walter Cronkite, with the business school, with the nursing program they're starting up. So from a academic standpoint, they've really put a lot together. Now you need to start putting together the ability to really start broadening your horizons with how you're going to recruit. And I mean, it's not just from a football perspective, right? You talk about the baseball program used to be contenders for national titles on a very regular basis. They put in a lot of talented guys like Jason Kipnis and Dustin Pedroia and Barry Bonds. So
Dustin
baseball
Pedroia, what a great throwback name.
Right?
Gosh, he was the quintessential second baseman.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I'm a Mariners fan, but like when I was a kid, Dustin Pedroia, when I was playing baseball, that's one of the guys that I wanted to be. Just a small contact hitter with a great glove.
Dude, everybody's got that guy that you go up and like you get to the plate and you're like, I'm the next Dustin Pedroia, or I'm the next Hank Aaron, stuff like that. So it's just funny. But you want to get to that point with your basketball or baseball program again. Speaking of the basketball program, I don't know if you've been paying attention. We've got the number 11 recruiting class in the nation for next year. They're putting together something special. They're recruiting very well, and hopefully that's going to be a continued trend because Bobby Hurley can recruit his you-know-what off. It's just a matter of being able to take that coaching to the next level. But one of the things that helps you get to that next level has to be NIL.
Yeah, you got to have it. You got to have that sort of buy-in, and Kenny Dillingham has made that, I mean, such a big focus being at Arizona State because he knows how important it is. He knows, hey, recruiting is the lifeblood of your program. That's a long-standing statement and reality in college football. And with NIL being a factor now, that has to be there, right? And Jake Dickert at Washington State talked very honestly last week about the same sort of thing. He said, talking to the Washington State community, hey, we don't have enough. We don't have enough right now to bring in the sort of talent we want. We have to have more. He said they can't even compete with Oregon State. Richie, he said, I don't know if the numbers are accurate, but I think he said that Oregon State had like 4 or 5 times more in their NIL pool than what Washington State has. And I'm going, whoa. If you're talking NIL department, Oregon State has got to be bottom 10% in all of college football, which isn't to say there's no money there, right? I don't think you can get DJ Uyunglele if you don't have access to some solid amount of funds. But when Jake Dickert's coming out and making a public statement of this isn't enough and we're not going to be able to compete at the level we want to compete at, that is underlying the importance or underscoring the importance of how vital it is. If you're going to recruit a high level, you got to be able to get kids these sorts of deals and offers. And I think Kenny Dillingham, I mean, from the moment he got there, right? He formulated the hashtag Activate the Valley. And I feel like every other press conference I see him talking at, whether it's after a game or after practice, I feel like he's talking about NIL. And I think that's sending a strong message to potential players and recruits that, hey, this is something that we care about. And if you come here, these opportunities are going to be made available to you.
Got to talk to you guys about our friends over at eBay Motors. Patience, drive patience. It's what brings home the winning trophy. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, the part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Also, got to mention that we've got the Locked On first ever National Sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts and Locked On, plus our national shows covering their league every single day. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Subscribe to the first ever National Sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's really exciting, Spencer. I'm excited for that next step for us.
Big time stuff. Big time moves over here at the Locked On Network, as per our usual arrangement.
Yes, it is, which we're going to go ahead and keep the conversation focused on the NIL side of things. And talking now about how to proceed moving forward, it feels like NIL has to be one of the biggest things that is going to drive you to that next level, because you look at some of the more successful programs in the country right now and the way that they have turned that NIL opportunity into, winning national championships and building the other good teams. Look at LSU, and Brian Kelly comes down there and they start, not that they couldn't recruit before, but I mean, you really take another step forward. You bring former Arizona State quarterback Jaden Daniels down there, and you turn him into, as much as it pains me to say it, a Heisman Trophy candidate. Like, he's been otherworldly this year. And part of the reason why he went to LSU was NIL opportunities. One of the reasons why he has taken that next step is because of the Brian Kelly effect. And then on the flip side of things, you look at Alabama, you look at Clemson, who are treading water right now because they're trying to catch up with NIL. And like, you have Dabo Swinney come out and say that, his athletes shouldn't be making money and stuff like that. And that really hurt Clemson. And now Clemson is consistently not ranked anymore. NIL is such a huge factor in everything that you're trying to build. It goes across all sports, but we've definitely seen it from the football aspect of things.
Yeah, I think we really have. And I don't think you have to have, NIL pools that are the size of the largest ones in the country. By the way, who has a huge NIL collective?
Who?
SMU.
Yeah.
SMU's got a huge NIL collective. It's, I think, one of the 10 most valuable ones in the entire country. But I think that's a way to go about it. It doesn't have to be at that level, though, right? So SMU has bought their way into the ACC because them being there, having never played a Power 5 football conference season, and Oregon State, currently ranked 11th in the college football playoff rankings, being left behind is an absurdity on its face. It is absolutely ridiculous and illogical. That's the power of, having that much money, which SMU clearly does, and the motivation as well to play Power 5 conference football. So I look at SMU and I say, okay, that's one way to go about it. And they have, by the way, brought in, I think they had a top 15 ranked transfer portal class down there in Dallas. And guess what? It's paying dividends. They are one of the favorites to win the American Conference. It's going to be, I believe, in all likelihood, I'm going to check the standings real quick, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be them and Tulane, because Tulane is really, really good. And we know that. Both teams, along with UT. What's that?
They beat USC last year in the Cotton Bowl.
They did indeed. And their only loss this year was against Ole Miss. And I don't think they had Michael Pratt, their quarterback, for that game. So
either.
It's a good team. You've got SMU and you've got UTSA. So those are the top teams in the American Conference right now that are going about it very different ways. SMU has got a lot more money than Tulane and a lot more money than UTSA. And so I think when you look at, trying to compete, like in the context of Arizona State, the reason I'm bringing up SMU is it doesn't have to be all in at that level where you're just able to essentially buy players and pay them huge sums of money. Like, that's not the only way to get kids. It just can't be so minimal that it's, a negligible amount that you're going to be able to offer kids compared to other places, because it can make the difference between landing this recruit that makes an impact on your program and not landing this recruit. Now, that could be a guy at a quarterback position. It could be a safety. It could be defensive. It could be all sorts of different spots. And yeah, you'd like to have as much in your NIL collective as possible. But the long-winded point that I'm trying to make here is you have to be respectable, serviceable, solid, average in order to be able to compete at the highest level, because SMU, Tulane, and UTSA in the American Conference are all in the same spot. There's no way that Tulane and UTSA are, offering the same amounts of money to kids. SMU is definitely able to offer more, but there's more than one way to go about it. I can also guarantee you, though, that Tulane has got NIL collectives that are competent, serviceable, competitive. That's what I think you got to strive for if you're Arizona State. You don't need to be top 10, 15, 20 in the country for total amount of an NIL evaluation, but you have to be enough to where it's not a liability. I think if you can do that, then you can bring in enough kids to bring in a conference championship caliber team in the Big 12.
100%. And part of, like you said, being able to bring those recruits in is having that NIL advantage. Me and you have talked about before is, Stanford and the ASU, one of the things that they were struggling to do was build their NIL collective. And Stanford also has their academic standards and everything that's made it a little more difficult. But look at their recruiting class for next year. There was a point in time, I want to say they were top 30, top 25. I haven't checked rankings in a minute, but they're starting to get all of that figured out again. And once they are able to get that figured out, I mean, they're going to get, it wasn't that long ago that they were a legitimate playoff threat. They were beating Oregon on a pretty consistent basis. I don't know if you knew that or not, Mr.
No,
McLaughin.
I don't recall.
Okay, just making sure. Yeah, I wanted to remind you just in case. It's so important to be able to get back on track. And for ASU, I wonder if part of the reason that NIL was so suspect is A, they didn't have what they have now, which is the Sun Angel Collective, which is going to be a really good stepping process. And B, people didn't want to buy in because of the state of the different programs, right? You don't want to spend your money on a football team that's coached by Herm Edwards and is settling for mediocrity. But you bring in a guy like Kenny Dillingham, who you're already seeing his dividends pay off. He's matched your win total from last year. He's matched your Pac-12 win total from last year. He's clearly coaching a much more talented team. He's getting people to believe in them. Is that going to be a continued trend? That's what a lot of people in the Valley were probably waiting to see. But there was always going to be held back because of Ray Anderson, the athletic director. And as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, it was a very public display of wanting to get him fired and removed from the program. Now that he's gone, I'm so curious if you're going to get more people to buy in, because you talk about the state of Arizona and how big it is inside the Valley with so many different areas that have so many good products to produce. So you have the West Side with Liberty High School. You've got Centennial High School. In the East Valley, you've got Mountain Vista. You got... Isn't
Perry a good high school?
Perry is good. Notre Dame Prep. Brophy. Consistently Saguaro, Cactus. I know I'm missing big.
You're consistently getting double-digit blue chip recruits out of the state of Arizona every single year.
Exactly, and this is going to be a big opportunity for the NIL to show up, and then for these kids that they're putting so much focus on keeping them home to also want to stay home. Kenny Dillingham has mentioned we want these kids to be remembered as personal favorites in the Valley. People look back at Terrell Suggs, who was a Valley kid, and we love him to pieces. He's one of the most favorite Arizona kids ever. It's just taking that step in the right direction where the fans and the boosters are going to take more of an interest in trying to support those NIL opportunities, which in turn gets the kids to stay here and gets kids across the country to come here as well. You're recruiting very well in California, in Texas, and Louisiana. That's going to be hopefully a continued process for you.
Yeah, I think that keeping in-state recruits is a pretty key element to building a strong program when you're in a state like Arizona. So, for my Ducks up in Oregon, for instance, yeah, you want to be able to get the best kids that come out of the state of Oregon. But you know how many blue chip kids come out of there every year?
Jordan Fortier, ASU. Just saying.
3, 4. Like you get a handful of good players. You don't get quite as many, but Arizona is a state. I think this is starting to apply to Utah as well. I think Arizona is ahead of Utah. I think you're seeing a lot more big time prospects come out of Utah and a little bit Colorado as well. But I think that when you're in a state like Arizona, which is a hotbed both for temperatures and recruiting, you've got to be able to make that pitch to kids that says, hey, this is the place you want to be. This is the place you should want to be, because those are going to be, if your program is operating correctly, both on the field and off the field, those are going to be the easiest kids to land, right? A big time there. Again, there aren't as many in the state of Oregon, but the Ducks have put themselves in a position recruiting wise where if you've got a big time in-state recruit, it's a surprise if he doesn't choose the Ducks, right? Like the last 5-star to come out of the state of Oregon, I believe, was Thomas Tyner. Where'd he go? Oregon, right? Then he medically retired, went to Oregon State, but went to the Ducks first, and there have been a handful of other ones, and they don't get all of them, certainly, because Oregon recruits heavily out of the state of California and Texas and Arizona. And some other spots, in Arizona and Washington too. But if you have the program operating the level that it is capable of, you're going to land not every big time in-state recruit, but you're not going to see them going elsewhere the way they once did for this Arizona State program. I mean, where things fell during the Herm Edwards era was just shameful. I mean, to be outside of the top 100, you're behind Mountain West, American Conference, Sun Belt teams at Arizona State. Just absolute insanity. And I think that Dillingham knows what he is doing and what is needed to recruit at a high level, and I'm excited to see where it goes.
We mentioned them earlier, and we got to talk about them once again. Our friends over at FanDuel are sponsoring this episode. Score early in the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app's easy to use. There's a wide variety of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And I want to echo what we brought up earlier, and that is Locked On launching their first ever national sports channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories across all leagues that you can think of. And they go with local experts on Locked On. It's national shows, all that good stuff. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. It's special, Spencer. It's very, very special what they are putting together up here at at Locked On. Let's go ahead and round out this podcast with a handful of candidates that I think would be pretty rock solid for Arizona State. First of all, I want to shout out Paul Madison. He joined my live on Monday or Sunday. Oh, God, I think it was Monday. Yeah, it was Monday when we talked about Ray Anderson being let go. It was a lot of fun, but Paul was giving me a lot of different guys to look at. So, Paul, just wanted to make sure I shouted you out. Next, I want to talk about some of the guys. So, he gave me 4 guys, and then I've got 2 in-house guys as well. The first big name from the outside is Scott Barnes at Oregon State. And I'm not going to lie, Spencer. That would be a big splash move, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
it would. It'd be an aggressive move. And I mean, the pitch is readily available as Oregon State and Washington State navigate the lawsuit. Got a big win from the judge the other day. And, they're the only board members of the Pac-12 that has been established now. So everyone else can't vote on the future of the conference, is my understanding. But so what I look at with the Barnes situation is, what exactly does he want in life? Because if you're talking about a de facto Mountain West school or somewhere in between a G5 and a Power 5 in terms of your conference and pedigree and the Big 12, that's a pretty easy pitch. That's a pretty easy pitch. And it's clear that Scott Barnes has done a good job. I think that on the basketball front, leaves a lot to be desired with the way those programs have been operated. I think that, Wayne Tinkle had the magical run to the Elite Eight for the Beavs a couple of years ago, and then followed it up with one of the worst college basketball seasons in recent memory. I think they won like 3 games in the entire year. So it's been a little up and down outside of that. But again, what's the most important job? Who you hire as your football coach. Clearly knows what he's doing there, and Arizona State already has their guy. And I think that, the commitments that Oregon State has made. Look at the renovations at Riiche Stadium, for instance, to bring that kind of into the 21st century as a college football stadium. And then, ironically and unfortunately, it's going to be a G5 stadium, which is just, really, really stupid. But anyway, so I think that he's done a good job over there. You look at the success of that baseball team year in and year out. Contender, regional appearance, and they had a coaching change, by the way. So I think the athletic department writ large has been solidly run in Corvallis. And I think if you gave him the resources of Arizona State, he'd do very well.
Another interesting name I want to throw out before I give a couple more examples, but this one also caught my attention, is Lisa Campos over at UTSA. She's been all over the place. She actually was in-state at NAU for a handful of years. She has been at UTSA as their athletic director. She firmly has my attention. She's one of the candidates that I would absolutely love to interview her as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, the in-state component is intriguing, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
UTSA, I think, is, certainly on the football field been really good, and they have, I'm not sure when she got to UTSA, but this year,
2018.
Yeah, that's really intriguing because
they've had some good programs.
They've had some good programs, and they've gone from Conference USA to the American, which is a step up in competition. And so, having been at the helm of that athletic department during that time, I think gives you a certain pedigree and moxie that is intriguing. And then you combine that with the fact that she's worked in the state before. Hard to not see how she isn't one of the top 3 or 4 candidates out there. I think you'd go for Barnes first because he's been at the Power 5 level. Campos is an intriguing name to follow, to say the least.
Yeah, I would definitely tell you that Scott Barnes, Lisa Campos would be 2 of my top 3 options. A couple other individuals to monitor are Brent Jones over at Troy, Brian Blair at Toledo. If you wanted to stay in-house, there's 2 really good options here. You're looking at Jim Rund, who is the current interim athletic director for the team, the university, which obviously speaks to the way that they view him and all that good stuff. He is the vice president of educational outreach and student services. Now he is the acting athletic director. Like I said, they clearly like him quite a bit. And then the person that I first caught the attention by Chris Cartman over at Sun Devil Source is Rocky Harris. He's been with the program for over 20 years. He is somebody that's really hands-on with everything that's going on at the university. And I'm curious about your opinion, Spencer, here, that I'm going to turn it over to you. Do you think it would be better to stay in-house in this situation? Obviously, you're going to do your research and you're going to interview in-house and out of the state and whatnot. But with the way that here's what's interesting to me. Look at Willie Bloomquist for the baseball program. Look at Kenny Dillingham with the football program. They're putting an emphasis on bringing back guys that are associated with Arizona State University. I'm curious, do you think that's going to be valued as well when it comes to looking at staying in house, or would you not necessarily worry about it? I'm curious what you think.
I don't think it makes that much of a difference for your athletic director.
I would agree.
I think for a coach, it certainly can. At a place that, to some parts of the country could be seen as a stepping stone sort of job, when you hire an alum who is able to do a good job, that I think is an advantage. You see that with Dillingham right now at ASU. You see it with Jonathan Smith over at Oregon State as well. I think for, hiring an athletic director, I frankly would struggle to stay in-house here, given the way things have been run over the last several years. That would feel, if you have access to a truly qualified pool of candidates, right? We're talking about these potential names, and yeah, they're all qualified. Are they interested? If they are, I think you have to give them a look. I don't know the people that are, in-house that could be potential replacements here. But I think when you have the opportunity to go hire someone with the experience and pedigree of Elisa Campos or Scott Barnes or the AD at Troy, I think someone who's got that sort of credibility is going to be able to come in and make the sorts of changes and be willing and wanting to make the sorts of changes because they've seen that are necessary, because they've seen it elsewhere, right? That's what you're looking for here, is things have not been run the way you want them to. So you want an outside voice. You want someone who says, hey, we did it this way over here, and you guys are doing it this way here, and we need to up our game and change in this capacity. Someone who is in-house, I think, will have a greater tendency, though they may have ideas of, what can be improved upon. I think they can still have a tendency to lean towards keeping things status quo, or not making upgrades, or not doing this, that, and the other thing. I would go with an outside hire here. I would, especially if you could get Barnes from Oregon State or Campos from UTSA. I would go outside here.
I have to agree with you. It's not even that, like, I don't believe in Jim Rund or Rocky Harris. I very, very much believe in them. I think those are two really, really good options, especially with all the experience they have at the university. I love that you bring up that they would recognize biggest areas of improvement and all that good stuff. I just look at some of the outside options, and they're really hard not to look at. I think Campos is the one that intrigues me the most. She's got so many years as an athletic director. She's familiar with the state of Arizona, albeit at Flagstaff, which is further north. It's not the valley, but I mean, she at least has that connection to the state of Arizona. So it's definitely something that I take into account. Barnes, to me, is the exciting hire. He's the one where you bring him down and you're like, oh my goodness, that's the move. Jim Rund and Rocky Harris, I know a lot of people would potentially be underwhelmed, and the other half would be really, really excited. I would definitely fall towards the excited part. I really don't think that there's a wrong answer between Barnes, Campos, Rund, or Harris. I just don't know too much about Brent Jones at Troy or Brian Blair at Toledo, but between the two in-house and then Barnes and Campos, I think if you hired one of those four, I would be really, really excited. But I'm curious what the viewers think. Who do you want as the new athletic director? I want to hear you guys sound off on how excited you are for the next era of Sun Devil sports. But as always, I thank you guys for tuning in wherever you're getting your podcast. Hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. You can hit me up, of course, at Riiche Bradshaw 36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. If you want to talk to Spencer as well, he is our Pac-12 expert. He knows everything. You can also hate on him for being an Oregon fan. It's going to be at small_55. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. I will see you tomorrow for our 3 keys to victory against Oregon. Till then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On Sun Devils.